Hi dear students, today I'll be taking a class on genetics and orthodontics. Some things have to be described that I'm going to describe on the board, and the rest of the things I'll just explain it. So genetics, when we talk about, the thing that strikes in our mind is gene, DNA, all that stuff, right? We have learned it in primary classes, and now we are going to learn more in detail about it, that how these genes and how the genetic makeup, the DNA affects malocclusion in orthodontics, right? So we'll start with the basics. Basics, we know that a cell has a nucleus and all the genetic material is contained in that nucleus in the form of a chromosome. Now, how does DNA come about to form a chromosome is what we are going to learn today. So DNA is the blueprint, what you say, the genetic makeup of an individual. It forms the genotype. Genotype means whatever is there in your genes, that is genotype. And when it expresses physically, that if I have a gene for blue eyes and if I express it, then that is phenotype. So if a person is tall, that is his phenotype, and the gene that is going that is responsible for that is the genotype of that individual, right? So you know, DNA is nothing. It's a compound that consists of it's a molecule that consists of a phosphate group, a backbone of sugar base, and then you have nitrogenous bases, right? There are 4 of them in DNA: adenine, thymine, and guanine and cytosine. These are bound by each. There are 2 strands intercoiled around each other. That is the Watson-Crick model. And adenine and thymine are bound by 2 hydrogen bonds, whereas guanine and cytosine are bound with 3 hydrogen bonds. So this whole structure is the DNA structure. What happens is this gets coiled around, and that is called as primary coiling, where DNA, the strands intertwine among each other. And then after that, there are some proteins called as histones. 8 histones together form the nucleosomes. These nucleosomes, then the strands wrap around the nucleosomes. That is called as the secondary coiling. So it is getting more and more coiled. The third coiling is when it again gets super coiled. The DNA gets super coiled around itself, around the proteins, around the histones. That is super coiling. That is the tertiary coiling, where you have the legs, the chromatids that are formed. And when you have the quaternary coiling, then the whole chromosome is formed. Now these chromosomes, there are 23 pairs of chromosomes, that is 46 chromosomes in a human being, and we have around 3 billion base pairs in our genetic makeup in the human beings. Chromosome has 2 legs, the shorter one, that is the P arm, and the longer one, that is the Q arm. So this is the whole structure of a chromosome. On chromosome are the on this. Now what is the difference between DNA and gene? Gene and DNA, I have given that in the PPT. Now DNA, I told you, it's a molecule. It has 2 strands and it's intertwined. If you take a segment of DNA that is responsible for some characteristics in the organism, then that is called as gene. So if I take this segment and this is responsible for height, then this becomes the gene for height, right? So this is we have millions and billions of genes on our chromosomes at different locations. So the location of a particular gene is called as locus, or for 2 genes it's called as loci. So this is called as locus. Now if you have variation of any gene, like you are going to have, suppose you have a gene here for I told you color, like hair color, imagine, right? You have black hair color, that gene is supposed to be here. Now on any other person, that gene could be present on the same location, but it could be for blue hair color, for red, or for brown hair color, right? So these are called as alleles, right? These are called as alleles. That is the alteration in the form of gene on the same location. So you could have a gene for purple flowers on this location, and in another chromosome you could have the same gene located there, but it would code for a different color, right? It's the same gene, the gene is for hair color, it could be different colors, right? So that are called as alleles, right? So this is the whole thing about genetic makeup, the basic DNA thing. Now we'll go to the principles of genetics, that is the Mendelian principles, and then a little bit about twin studies, Butler field theory, and how malocclusions are affected by genetics. Alright guys, now we are going to talk about mutations and homeobox genes. You get a short note on both, right? So first we'll take homeobox genes. As the name suggests, it's a gene. Gene, I have told you, it's a segment of DNA that is supposed to carry out some function or characterization of any individual, any characteristic. So homeobox genes are specially involved in the development of the head and neck. These genes are released by the neural crest cells. If you remember what we had taught in prenatal development of phase, in that neural crest cells migrate and then they reach the branchial arches, the pharyngeal arches, and then they signal the development of face and the neck associated portions. So any change or any disturbance in their migration can cause syndromes or any developmental defects, right? So these are known as homeobox genes, and they are the master genes for head and neck. Their functions are patterning, that means where eyes have to form, where nose has to form, that they decide. Induction, they start the development, initiate the development. They also carry out programmed cell death. So where you need apoptosis, that's where these genes come into picture. And then they also carry out, because these have both epithelial and mesenchymal origins, that's why they have those interactions also. And in this, they help in the development. By doing all this, they help in the development of face and neck. Now, for examples, you have to write a short note, right? So then you can write down the examples that are like the homeobox family. The gene family has MSX1. MSX1 means muscle segment less. All these genes were seen in Drosophila melanogaster. That's a fly. So this was carried out on that melanogaster, Drosophila melanogaster, and there were 180 base pairs that were identified, and out of them MSX1, muscle segment less, was the master gene for skeletal development, craniofacial development. So any problem here, you could see cleft lip palate, you could also see abnormal tooth morphology, missing tooth, especially the lateral incisors. MSX2, if you take MSX2 also, you could see craniosynostosis, joining of two sutures. Distal leg less, or distal less also had its effects in the tooth morphology and abnormalities. PAX9 was associated with supernumerary tooth, ectopic tooth eruption, and then again missing tooth, because one gene can have one character can be decided by many genes. One gene also can decide many characters. So this is polygenic, right? SHH, this is sonic hedgehog. Sonic hedgehog gene is responsible for midline patterning of the face, right? And goosepoid. Also, it also has a role in the development. So if you write what are homeobox genes, they are derived from neural crest cells, and what are their functions, and what was the experiment that was done, and some examples, then you're good, right? Coming to mutations. Now, any problem in the genes could lead to mutations, and mutations then could lead to the development of defects or syndromes or any other problem, right? So you need to know what are the mutations. There are classified into three types: point mutation, frame shift, and suppressor. Suppressor is seen in tRNA, where the tRNA molecules, they decode all the mutations that have occurred and try to fix it. So they are that's why known as suppressor. They try to suppress the mutation that's present. So point mutation is just replacement. The key word is replacement of one nitrogenous base by another. So there are two types: transition, that means adenine is replaced by thymine, or guanine is replaced by cytosine. And transversion is where both of them get exchanged, right? A with adenine with guanine and thymine with cytosine, right? So that is transversion. Now it can have three effects. One is undetectable, means they have got replaced, so there is no problem. The things because it's going on as scheduled. The gene coding is being done properly. There is no effect as such, so that's undetectable. If you have somewhere where one base pair is replaced by another, you could have one amino acid that's being replaced by another amino acid. So there you could have missense, and then you have nonsense in the sense there are some codons. When you have three nitrogenous base pairs together, that forms a codon. So you have nonsense codons. That means that they are the terminating. Like if you have these nonsense codons, they don't code for any protein. So there the protein formation comes to a stop. They don't code. Like these are the three: UAA, UGA, and UAG. These are the ones. So if any combination of this occurs, then the protein synthesis stops there only. They don't code, right? So that is termination. So this is basic point mutation. Now frame shift is when you have not at a point, you have a thing that is missing. You have a nitrogenous base that is missing, or a nitrogenous base that has been added extra. So the whole sequence changes. So then you have larger errors in this. So these are the three types of mutations. Now coming to Mendel's laws, the first law, second law, and the third law. So Gregor Mendel was an Austrian monk, and he carried out studies on pea plants, that is Pisum sativum. And then he had a lot of time, so he came out with the laws for genetics. And there are three basic laws. That is the law of dominance. Law of dominance means that if you have parents that have pure traits, and if the parents have pure traits, then the offspring will have only one trait that's present, and that will be the dominant trait. For example, if you have a tall dad and a short mom, so they are pure because there is no this is recessive and this is purely dominant. If you cross them, then 100% the genotype will be TT. So what will express? The dominant one will express. So all the offsprings will have a phenotype of being tall, right? So this is the genotype and this is the phenotype. 100% they will have the dominant trait that will express. And the second law is the law of segregation. Law of segregation means before recombining, what happens? The gametes will separate. The alleles for a particular trait will separate, and then they recombine, and then they are carried out onto the offspring. So if you have a allele that has a dominant and a recessive trait, dominant and recessive allele, they will separate. Both of them will separate, and then they will recombine in different combinations and then deliver to the offspring. Independent assortment, that is the law of independent assortment. That means that more than one traits, height, color, all those are independent of each other. So whether I'm short or tall, it does not depend whether I have brown eyes or blue eyes or any other character. All of them are located or maybe on the same chromosome at different locations, but they don't affect each other. So that is the law of independent assortment. So this is about Mendel's law. So let's talk about some disorders: autosomal dominant and autosomal recessive. So autosomal dominant means that if one parent carries the affected gene on the chromosome, that is expressed into the in the offspring. So here, if we, for example, we have an affected father which has a affected gene on one of the chromosomes, and there is a normal mother, but if you cross them, the alleles separately, what will you have is you will have half the offsprings that won't be affected and 50% will be affected, and it will be expressed because of this gene that is affected. It's dominant, so it will be expressed. So 50% of the offsprings have the chance to have that particular syndrome. So this is most commonly seen in Treacher-Collins syndrome, right? Then you have autosomal recessive. In autosomal recessive, what happens is you will have parents having the gene, they are the carriers. They are actually the carriers of the disorder. So both the parents have one gene, affected gene on the homologous chromosome. So when you cross them, what happens is you will have have 25% of the offsprings have the chance to actually express the disorder or the disease. So you will have 25% normal children, 50% carriers. They can transmit the disease, the gene, and then you have 25% that are affected. So this we have seen in sickle cell anemia. You can see in that also. And then there is something called as X-linked. Now X-linked means there's a sex chromosome that's involved. So if you have a father or the parent has a affected chromosome on the X, then and a normal mother, so what happens is when you cross it, you're gonna have 50% carriers, and I think that's it. So the males will be normal. In an X-linked or sex-linked disorder, the males will be normal and the females will be carriers. Suppose the mother also had carried one chromosome X, that gene, then they would have an affected or a sick child. So the best example for this is hemophilia. So the females, this can be transmitted only to females, not to males. And these females, if they cross over with a male that again has the same chromosome, then chances are that 50% of the offsprings will have the disease. Fertility is more, right? So these are asymptomatic carriers. So this completes our X-linked. Then we're gonna talk about, okay, chromosomal. You can have mutations, you can have changes in structure, changes in number. So when you have changes in number, if there is one chromosome that's extra, then it will be aneuploidy. If you have an entire set of chromosomes that are extra, then you have polyploidy. If you have one chromosome, instead of two chromosomes, if you have just one chromosome, then it's monosomy. If you have a particular chromosome number where you are supposed to have two chromosomes, you have three. Like in Down syndrome, you have trisomy 21. So then that is called as trisomy. So these are the disorders of the number. Structure may, you can have deletion, you can have addition, you can have inversion, small things that can be there. Alright, then what about Butler's field theory? Butler's field theory, nothing, it's basically more of anthropology, because he had studied the evolution, and what he came to know is that when we move, he had divided the oral cavity into 4 areas: the molar, premolar, canine and incisor. So what his concept was that as we move far away, farther distal in the segments, chances of aberration in those areas are more. Changes in structure or missing tooth, that is more. That's why you most commonly you see that the third molars are missing or the premolars are missing. Then the canine area is supposed to be the most stable area. It's the mid of the table. That's why it's the most stable area according to Butler's. This theory is not applicable in mandible, because in mandible the central incisor is actually more common missing than the lateral incisor. So that much if you write, this is enough for Butler's field theory. Now coming to twin studies, see, if you want to know about genes and the effect of genes and effect of environments, you have to take people of the same DNA. You don't get that, right? Except for twins. So you have monozygotic twins and dizygotic twins. Now monozygotic twins have the exact same replica of DNA in them, because it's the zygote that splits. So the DNA will be same. So then you can see the characteristics, the effect of environment, because their genetic makeup is same. So whatever changes there is due to environment. So many studies have been done on both of them. You can see the PPT. You just have to quote studies and tell the difference. What is the difference? What is the concordance? Concordance means if a particular trait is expressed in both after doing the study, that means that trait is concordant. Dizygotic means 2 ova, 2 sperms and 2 different zygotes, 2 different DNA, 2 different genetic makeup. So there the difference you can see. Environment will be same, but due to genetic differences, maybe one of the twins might have a malocclusion, the other one won't have. So that is the importance of twin studies in orthodontics. Then what else are we covering? We are now, after that homeobox is done, twin studies is done, then comes the malocclusion. Now genetics and malocclusion is a vast chapter because there are many studies that have been done and almost all the malocclusions have a genetic basis. So class 2 Div1, the retruted mandible, the prognathic maxilla has a strong genetic tendency. Class 3 was characterized by Habsburg's jaw, the royal family, where you had a large jaw in almost all the male siblings of the royal family. So that has a strong genetic tendency. Cleft lip palate has a strong genetic tendency. Class 2 Div2 also has both genetic and environmental. So when you have a malocclusion, it's not just the genes that are working, it's your habits, it's the environmental factors, what you have studied in etiology of malocclusion, that also comes into play. And then you have changes of genetics where genes are responsible for formation, abnormal structure, abnormal number, laterals missing, premolars missing, supernumerary teeth, canine impactions. All these have certain genetic tendency. Hypodontia, anodontia, cleft lip palate, any syndromes, all of them have. So you just have to enumerate. I have given 1 or 2 slides on each of the abnormalities. You can go through it and then prepare a chart. So I think that completes our genetics and malocclusion. And I hope you study hard, stay safe, and I hope this class you understood something, right? See you guys. Bye.